So, what if I told you that one single piece of paper, signed in some gorgeous, fancy palace, actually killed more than 70 million people? I know, right? It sounds completely made up, like something out of a conspiracy theory. But here's the thing. The historical record? It's crystal clear. This really happened.
And that piece of paper, it's the Treaty of Versailles. It was sold to the entire world as the peace to end all wars. But instead, it lit the fuse for the single deadliest conflict humanity has ever seen.
Okay, so to really get how this happened, we've got to go back in time. Let's start our investigation in 1918. The Great War, World War I. It's finally over, and the world, it's just a complete and total ruin.
And look, these are not just numbers on a screen. This is a tombstone for an entire generation. We're talking 20 million dead, 21 million wounded. Just try to wrap your head around that for a second. The world was literally drowning in grief. Europe was basically a graveyard.
So, standing in the middle of all this wreckage, you can bet everyone was asking the same single burning question. Who is responsible for this absolute nightmare?
Well, the world's leaders, they needed a simple bad guy for a super complicated tragedy. So they all pointed their fingers in one direction. The verdict was unanimous: Germany. See, the winners, they weren't looking for justice. Oh no, they wanted revenge.
And this revenge? It was gonna be served in the most beautiful palace you can imagine. You had all these leaders gathering at Versailles, smiling for the cameras, celebrating. They actually thought they were building this lasting peace. What a joke. They were really just planning the next war.
But here is the single most revealing detail of this whole sham. The one fact that tells you everything you need to know, that this was never, ever about peace. Germany, the country whose entire future was being decided, wasn't even invited to the discussions.
No. Instead, the fate of millions of people was decided by these four guys. They called themselves the Big Four. And let me tell you, their goals were a total recipe for disaster. On one hand, you had America's President Wilson, this big idealist. And on the other, you had France's Prime Minister, Clemenceau. They called him the Tiger. And all he cared about was revenge.
So President Wilson shows up with his big plan, the 14 points, a blueprint for a fair and just peace. Clemenceau basically just laughed in his face. He actually quipped, God himself only had 10 commandments, and Wilson wants 14 points. Guess who won that argument? Yeah, the Tiger did.
So what came next wasn't a peace treaty. It was the weaponization of peace. Here are the absolutely brutal terms Germany was forced to sign. This wasn't just a punishment. It was designed to cripple them for generations.
First up, its military was systematically destroyed. The army, slashed to just 100,000 men, basically a police force. No air force, no tanks, no submarines. Germany was left completely and utterly defenseless. Let's be clear, this wasn't about peace. This was about making them permanently weak. Then came the ultimate humiliation, Article 231. It's known as the War Guilt Clause. And this little piece of text forced Germany to officially accept 100% of the blame for every single death in World War I. For a proud nation, this was way more than just words on paper. It was a knife to the heart. And then, of course, there was the bill. Germany was ordered to pay reparations. The price tag, in today's money, get ready for this, an impossible $400 billion. That's a number designed not to be repaid. It's designed to crush you. So, you might be wondering, how long does it take to pay off a debt like that? Well, Germany made its final payment for World War I in, wait for it, the year 2010. Can you believe that? This was a punishment that literally shackled 3 generations of Germans.
Even the day they chose for the signing was a deliberate act of humiliation. June 28, 1919. Why that day? Because it was exactly 5 years to the day since the assassination that kicked off the whole war. The message couldn't have been clearer. Your guilt is permanent.
And in that poisoned soil of economic ruin and deep national shame, something absolutely terrible began to grow. A monster was being born.
The German economy just imploded. The government started printing money like crazy to try and pay the debts, and that triggered hyperinflation so insane that people were literally using wheelbarrows full of cash just to go buy a loaf of bread. Think about that. Kids were using stacks of worthless money as building blocks. It was total chaos.
And in the middle
of all that chaos, with society just crumbling around them, one single question echoed through the streets, screamed out in desperation. Who did this to us?
And then a voice emerged from that chaos, and it had a simple, poisonous answer. A failed artist, a former soldier, Adolf Hitler. He told the German people exactly what they were desperate to hear. This treaty is a crime. You've been stabbed in the back, and I alone, will make Germany strong again.
And so, the inevitable happened. Hitler seized power. And piece by piece, he tore up the treaty, breaking every single rule. He rebuilt the army. He rebuilt the air force. And the world? The world just watched, completely paralyzed. And only 6 years after he took power, the entire planet was at war again. So, what's the big lesson here? What do we take away from this paper trail of tragedy? Why does a document signed over a century ago still matter so much to us today?
Well, the evidence is pretty stark when you look at the contrast. After World War I, the victors chose punishment. They crushed their enemy, and all it did was create a second, even deadlier war. But after World War II, it seems the lesson was finally learned. This time, the victors chose partnership. They used things like the Marshall Plan to rebuild their former enemies, and that led to decades of peace.
And that, right there, is the lesson. It's a lesson etched in the blood of 70 million people. Revenge, it might feel good, it might feel righteous in the moment, but when you set out to humiliate your enemy, you don't actually destroy them. All you do is create a bigger and far more dangerous monster for the future.